At 7:43 on the morning I turned 30, my doorbell rang and I opened it expecting a package I didn't remember ordering. Instead, I found Harper Lane standing on my porch with rain in her hair, a paper grocery bag in one hand, and a folded note pinched between two fingers like it might explode. For a second, neither of us said anything. Then she looked me straight in the eye and said, "You still single?" That was how my 30s began. My name is Daniel Mercer. I was exactly 30 years old, wearing one sock, holding a toothbrush, and living alone in a small rented house in Columbus, Ohio, where the furnace made a sound like a tired dog every time it kicked on. I designed websites for local businesses, which meant I spent most of my life making plumbing companies look trustworthy and coffee shops look artisanal. It was honest work, quiet work. The kind of work you choose when you've convinced yourself quiet is the same thing as peace. Harper had never been quiet. She was the girl who used to climb the fence behind my parents' house in sixth grade because walking around the block was, in her words, for people with weak calves. She was the girl who taught me how to drive stick shift badly in her dad's old pickup. The girl who cried at dog food commercials but could argue a parking ticket down to a warning. And she was the girl I had pinky promised at 17 that if neither of us were married by 30, we'd marry each other. We made the promise on the hood of my first car after senior prom. Both of us overdressed, underage, and too afraid to admit we were only pretending to joke. I hadn't seen the note in 12 years, but I recognized it immediately. Harper held it up between us. The paper was yellowed at the edges, creased down the middle, with my handwriting on one side and hers on the other. A contract written in blue ink on the back of a diner receipt. My stomach did something embarrassing. "You kept that?" I asked. She lifted one shoulder. "You signed it." I signed a lot of things when I was 17. I also wrote a song called Midnight Volcano. It had emotional range. It had 3 chords and a weather metaphor. Her mouth twitched, and there it was, the old Harper smile. Not the polite one people give at office parties. The real one. The one that always made me feel like I'd gotten away with something. She looked different now, of course. We both did. Her dark blonde hair was shorter, brushing her jaw in damp waves. There were faint lines at the corners of her eyes, the kind earned by laughing hard and sleeping badly. She wore a navy raincoat over a cream sweater, jeans tucked into ankle boots, and somehow looked like she had walked straight out of a memory but with better posture. "You going to invite me in?" she asked. "Or are we negotiating marriage on your porch in front of Mrs. Donnelly's security camera?" I glanced across the street. Mrs. Donnelly's blinds moved. "Come in," I said. Harper stepped past me, close enough that I caught the scent of rain, vanilla shampoo, and coffee. It hit me harder than it should have. Some people enter a room. Harper changed the air pressure. She set the grocery bag on my kitchen counter and looked around. "Still no curtains in the kitchen." "They're called minimalist window treatments." "They're called your neighbors know what cereal you buy." I leaned my hip against the counter. "You came here to critique my home decor?" "I came here because you turned 30. You remembered." Her eyes flicked to mine. "I remember a lot." That small sentence landed between us with more weight than it deserved. I looked away first because apparently turning 30 had not cured cowardice. The truth was, Harper and I had not drifted apart in one dramatic fight. It was worse than that. We'd faded. College pulled us in different directions, careers added excuses. Then she got engaged to a man named Andrew who wore loafers without socks and called everyone champ, and I congratulated her like my chest wasn't collapsing. The engagement ended 2 years later. I heard about it from mutual friends, typed 3 different messages, and sent none of them. After that, our contact became birthdays, holidays, and the occasional meme. Safe things, small things. Things that did not require admitting I still measured women against a girl who once dared me to eat a spoonful of cinnamon behind a bowling alley. Harper reached into the grocery bag and pulled out a gas station cupcake with a single blue candle stuck in the frosting. I figured if I was going to enforce a legally binding diner receipt, she said, I should bring breakfast. That cupcake looks like it was frosted during a power outage. It was the last one, very symbolic. Of what? Our standards. I laughed and it surprised me, Not because she was funny. Harper had always been funny, but because the laugh came from somewhere untouched, somewhere I'd accidentally boarded up. She found a lighter in my junk drawer like she still lived there in muscle memory, lit the candle, and held the cupcake between us. Make a wish, Mercer. You're not supposed to say the last name unless I'm in trouble. You might be. The candle flame trembled. I looked at her face in the gray morning light, at the rain caught on her lashes, at the brave angle of her chin. She was making jokes, but her fingers were tight around that cupcake. Harper Lane, who could stare down anyone, was nervous. That changed everything. Because up until that moment, I thought she had come to tease me, to bring up an old promise and laugh at how ridiculous we'd been. But she hadn't driven across town in the rain at dawn for nostalgia. She had come to ask a question neither of us knew how to ask normally. So I closed my eyes and made the only wish I'd been making for half my life. When I opened them, Harper's expression had softened. "You're supposed to blow it out," she whispered. "I know." I leaned forward. She did too, just a little, still holding the cupcake. Our hands brushed under the paper wrapper. It was barely a touch. It still managed to erase 12 years. I blew out the candle and smoke curled between us. Harper set the cupcake down carefully. Then she unfolded the note. I could see the old words there, ridiculous and sacred. If Daniel Mercer and Harper Lane are both unmarried at 30, they agree to marry each other because no one else will understand why gas station nachos are a food group. Underneath were our signatures, and below them, in Harper's newer handwriting, dated 2 weeks ago, was one line I had never seen before. I read it once, then again. My throat tightened. Harper watched me like she was waiting for a verdict. The new line said, "I'm still single, Danny, and I'm tired of pretending this was ever a joke." I stared at that sentence until the ink blurred. I'm still single, Danny, and I'm tired of pretending this was ever a joke. Nobody had called me Danny in years. Not because I hated it, but because it belonged to a version of me who had not yet learned how to make disappointment look like practicality. Harper tucked her hands into the sleeves of her sweater. "Say something," she said. I looked up. "You wrote this 2 weeks ago." "Yes?" "And then just carried it around? In my purse? For 2 weeks?" "Mostly in the inside pocket. I didn't let it touch gum or receipts. It had dignity." "Harper." Her humor flickered. "Yes?" The rain tapped softly against the kitchen windows. My furnace groaned awake. Somewhere outside, a car passed through a puddle. I should have said something smooth. Something brave. Instead, I said, "I thought you were over me." Her eyes widened, just a fraction. Then she laughed once, but there was no humor in it. "That is possibly the stupidest thing you have ever said, and I watched you try to jump a shopping cart over a creek. I cleared most of it. You landed in poison ivy. I was heroic. You were blotchy." I smiled because she did, but it didn't last. "Harper," I said quietly, "you were engaged." She looked down at the note. "I know. To Andrew. I remember his name. I figured that meant that I'd moved on." She lifted her gaze back to mine. I tried. The kitchen got smaller. She swallowed, then set the note on the counter between us like evidence. "I tried because you never said anything," she said, "and I never said anything because you never said anything," which, looking back, was a very efficient system for ruining a decade. I huffed a breath. We were idiots. We were polite idiots. Worse. That did it. It cracked something open in me. The old ache rose up, but beneath it was something warmer, sharper. "I wanted to call you when I heard the engagement ended," I admitted. "I wanted you to. I wrote messages. I checked my phone." That one hit hard. Her voice stayed steady, but her eyes didn't. "For weeks, Danny." I stepped closer without thinking, and she didn't move away. "I'm sorry," I said. She blinked fast. "Me too." "For what?" "For saying yes to someone I didn't love the way he deserved." She let out a shaky breath. "For making it easier to be wanted than to be known." I had no defense against that. Against her honesty. Against the fact that she was standing in my kitchen on my birthday, offering me the truth like it might be the last good card in her hand. I reached for her, slowly, giving her every chance to step back. She didn't. My fingers closed around hers, and for 1 second we both stared at our hands like they were doing something illegal. Her hand was cold from the rain. I wrapped both of mine around it. "You're freezing," I said. "You're avoiding. I'm warming. You're stalling." I looked at her then. Really looked. "No," I said. "I'm trying not to rush the thing I've wanted since I was 17. Her lips parted. There. That was it. No poetry, no grand speech. Just the truth, finally standing upright in the room. Harper's fingers tightened around mine. "You wanted me?" I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was absurd that she didn't know. "Harper, I compared every woman I dated to you." "That's unhealthy." "I know. And unfair to them." "I know that too." "And flattering." "Extremely." Her smile trembled. Then she said, "I compared Andrew's laugh to yours." I winced. Poor Andrew. It wasn't his fault. He had a perfectly respectable laugh. Tax attorney laugh? Very dependent on context. We were smiling, but our hands were still locked between us, and the air had changed again. It wasn't nostalgia anymore. Nostalgia was safe because it was already dead. This was alive. This could bite. Harper glanced at the cupcake. So. So. "Do we get married now, or is there an application process?" I tilted my head. "You brought a 12-year-old receipt and a gas station cupcake. I assume that gets you to the interview stage." "Interview stage? Very rigorous." "I have references." "Your references once helped you steal a traffic cone." "Borrow." "For 5 months." "It looked good in my dorm." I laughed, and she laughed too, and just like that we were 17 and 30 at the same time. Then I sobered. "Can I take you somewhere today?" Her eyebrows lifted. "Somewhere?" "Birthday breakfast, or lunch, or wherever people go when they're trying to decide if a pinky promise is legally romantic." She glanced at my one sock. "You planning to wear that?" I was going for vulnerable. "You're succeeding." I squeezed her hand. "I'm asking you on a date, Harper." The word date hung there, bright and terrifying. She looked at me for a long second. Then she stepped closer, close enough that the sleeve of her sweater brushed my wrist. "Yes," she said, "but not because of the note." "No?" "No." Her eyes moved over my face, softer now. "Because you finally asked." I let out a breath I'd been holding since approximately 2009. "Good," I said. "Great, I'll put on a second sock." "Ambitious." "And pants that aren't older than our promise." "Don't change too much. I need to recognize the merchandise." I groaned. "Please don't refer to me as merchandise before our first date." "Fine. The applicant." "That's worse." She was grinning when I turned toward the hallway, and maybe that was why I got brave. Or reckless. Or finally tired of letting years pass politely. I turned back. Harper bumped into me because she had started to follow, and suddenly she was right there. One hand against my chest, my hand instinctively at her waist. We froze. Her palm rested over my heart. It was beating like it had somewhere urgent to be. "Sorry," she whispered. "I'm not." Her gaze dropped to my mouth. Every sensible thought I had left town. I leaned in slowly, slow enough to make it a question. Harper answered by rising onto her toes. Our first kiss tasted like coffee, rain, and a birthday wish I had no business getting. It was gentle at first, almost careful. Then her fingers curled in my shirt, and I forgot careful for half a second. I kissed her like someone who had missed a train 12 years ago and found it waiting at the station. When we broke apart, her eyes were bright. "Well," she said, a little breathless, "that complicates the interview process. I think you advanced to the final round." She pressed her smile against my shoulder for one brief, devastating second. Then my phone buzzed on the counter. We both glanced at it. A text from my mother lit the screen. "Happy birthday. Family dinner tonight at 6. Bring anyone special if you have someone. Don't pretend you don't know what I mean." Harper read it upside down and started laughing. I stared at the message, then at her. Her smile faded into something nervous and hopeful. I picked up the phone. Too soon? She asked. I threaded my fingers through hers again. No, I said and began typing. 12 years late. I texted my mother. Actually, I am bringing someone. 3 dots appeared immediately, then disappeared. Then appeared again. Harper leaned over my arm, her cheek nearly brushing my shoulder. Your mom is either thrilled or typing a medical questionnaire. My phone buzzed. Mom. Who? I typed. Harper. This time the 3 dots did not appear. For a full 10 seconds, nothing happened. Then my phone rang. Harper slapped a hand over her mouth. Don't laugh, I said. I'm not laughing. You're shaking. I'm emotionally vibrating, I answered. Hi, Mom. There was a sound on the other end like a chair scraping across tile. Daniel James Mercer. Full name. Great start. Did you say Harper, as in Harper Lane? As in the Harper who put glitter in your father's lawnmower? Harper whispered. Allegedly. I said, yes, that Harper. My mother inhaled. Is she there? Yes. Can she hear me? Yes. Good. Harper, sweetheart, if this is a birthday prank, I want you to know I am too old and too invested. Harper's eyes went soft. Hi, Mrs. Mercer. Oh, my mother said, voice suddenly thick. Hi, honey. That one word nearly undid Harper. I felt it in the way her fingers tightened around mine. Mom recovered quickly. Dinner at 6. Wear something nice. Not formal, nice. Daniel, clean your bathroom. Why would she need to inspect my bathroom? Because women notice things. Harper nodded solemnly. We do. I'm hanging up now, I said. 6, Mom repeated. And Daniel? Yeah? Don't be an idiot. She ended the call. Harper stared at the phone. Your mother has always been concise. She loves me through threats. It's beautiful. I set the phone down and turned to face her. We were still standing close, still hand in hand, but now the kiss hung between us like a lamp someone had switched on. Family dinner suddenly felt enormous, not because my family was difficult, because they would look at us and see everything we had refused to see for years. We don't have to go, I said. Harper's eyebrows rose. You already told her. I can fake a pipe burst. You design plumbing websites. You cannot fake plumbing. I know enough terminology to sound upset. She smiled, but her thumb traced once over my knuckle. Do you want me there? The question was small, careful. I realized then that underneath Harper's jokes was a woman bracing for rejection. Maybe she had spent 2 weeks carrying that note and 12 years carrying something heavier. I lifted our joined hands and kissed the back of hers. Yes, I said. I want you there. I want you at breakfast. I want you at dinner. I want you in the passenger seat complaining about my playlists. I want the whole day. Her eyes shone. That's a lot of wanting before 8:30. I've been saving up. She looked down, smiling like she couldn't help it. Then go put on your second sock, Mercer. I changed in record time, though Harper claimed otherwise from the hallway. Are you building the pants from raw denim? She called. I'm selecting. You own 4 pairs of jeans, and each has a personality. The one with the paint stain is divorced. I came out in dark jeans, a green sweater, and both socks. Harper gave me a slow once-over that made my ears heat. What? I asked. Nothing. That was not a nothing look. It was an applicant evaluation. And? She stepped closer, straightened my collar, and let her fingertips linger at my throat. Strong candidate. I forgot how breathing worked. We went to breakfast at the Bluebird Diner, the same place where we'd written the promise. It had changed owners twice, but the booths were still red vinyl, and the coffee still tasted like it had been brewed during a minor emergency. Harper slid into the booth across from me, then immediately frowned. What? I asked. This feels wrong. The coffee? No, sitting across from you. Before I could respond, she stood, came around to my side, and slid in beside me until her hip pressed against mine. My heart performed a gymnastics routine. It's better, she said, picking up a menu. I looked at her profile, the curve of her smile, the tiny scar near her eyebrow from when we'd tried to build a treehouse with one hammer and no plan. You're staring, she said. I'm adjusting to the seating arrangement. Take your time. The waitress came over, looked at us, then at our joined shoulders. Coffee? Yes, we said together. Harper grinned. Disgusting! We're already becoming one of those couples. One date and we share a beverage preference. Next, you'll start saying, we love that restaurant. We do love this restaurant. She bumped my shoulder with hers. Terrifying. We ordered pancakes and eggs and one side of hash browns to share. When the food arrived, Harper stole a strawberry from my plate without asking. You have your own, I said. Yours looked emotionally available. That doesn't even mean anything. It means you weren't guarding it. I pushed the rest of my strawberries toward her. There. Full custody. Her expression softened again, in that dangerous way that made me want to confess things. She reached for her coffee, then paused. I almost didn't come today. I stilled. She stared into the cup. I sat in my car outside your house for 20 minutes. I had this whole speech ready. Funny, casual, like, ha ha, remember this dumb thing? And then I saw your porch light and thought, what if he laughs for real? I wouldn't have. You might have, not cruelly, but maybe kindly, which would have been worse. I turned slightly in the booth, my knee brushing hers. Harper. She looked at me. I'm sorry I made you doubt it. You didn't make me. I helped. Her mouth pressed together. I took a breath. I was scared if I told you, I'd lose whatever version of you I still had. Birthday texts, Christmas memes. The illusion that we were fine. We were not fine, she said. No, I smiled sadly. We were extremely well-behaved disasters. She laughed, but a tear slipped down her cheek. I wiped it away with my thumb before I could overthink it. Her eyes fluttered closed for half a second, leaning into my hand like she was tired of being brave alone. When she opened them, she whispered, I don't want to be careful all day. Then don't. So she kissed me in the Bluebird Diner, in the booth where we had once written a marriage contract on a receipt because saying I love you had felt too dangerous. It wasn't a long kiss. It didn't need to be. Her hand cupped my jaw. Mine settled at her waist. The waitress walked by and said, Finally, without stopping. Harper pulled back, laughing against my mouth. Did she just… Yes. Were we that obvious as teenagers? Apparently to food service professionals. After breakfast, we walked in the rain under one umbrella because Harper had left hers in the car and claimed this was narratively stronger. Her shoulder tucked under my arm. My hand rested at her waist. We moved slowly, though the parking lot was small. At her car, she didn't pull away. Family dinner, she said. 6. Your mom will ask questions. Many. Your dad will pretend not to and then ask worse ones in the garage. Accurate. And what are we telling them? I looked at the woman I had loved badly, silently, stubbornly for half my life. The woman who had shown up with a note and a shaking hand. The woman who now stood under my umbrella waiting to know if I would choose her out loud. I brushed rain from her cheek. The truth, I said. That you're my date, that we're figuring this out, that I'm crazy about you. Her lips parted around a quiet breath. Crazy? She asked. Deeply, inconveniently crazy. She smiled. Good. Good? Because I'm not showing up to your mother's house as a maybe. I leaned in until our foreheads touched. No, I said. Not a maybe. Her arm slipped around my waist, and for a minute we stood there in the rain, 30 years old and 17 years late, holding on in the middle of an ordinary parking lot like it was the most romantic place on earth. At 5:42, Harper stood in my bedroom doorway holding up 2 shirts. The blue says dependable, she said. The gray says emotionally available but owns a drill. I do own a drill. Have you used it? Define used. She put the gray shirt back in the closet. Blue. You're very bossy for someone who broke into my birthday. I rang the bell. With intent. She smiled, but I could see nerves moving under it. She had changed into a black dress with tiny white flowers on it, simple and soft, with a cardigan buttoned over her shoulders. She looked like herself, which was worse than looking perfect. Perfect I could have survived. Herself made me want things. A drawer sat open near my bed, and inside was the old shoebox where I kept ticket stubs, postcards, and other proof I'd been sentimental while pretending not to be. Harper drifted toward it. Can I? I hesitated for half a second, then nodded. She lifted the lid and went still. On top was a photo booth strip from senior year. 4 pictures of us at the county fair. In the first, she was making a face. In the second, I was laughing at her. In the third, she was kissing my cheek. In the fourth, we were both looking at each other. Not at the camera. At each other. Harper touched the edge with one finger. You kept this. I kept a lot. She glanced down into the box. Movie tickets? First horror movie you claimed didn't scare you. It didn't. You slept with the hallway light on for 3 nights. For ambiance. She found a pressed maple leaf from homecoming, a napkin from Bluebird Diner, a tiny plastic dinosaur she'd hidden in my backpack before my freshman year of college. Her voice got quieter. Danny! I crossed the room and stood behind her, close but not touching. I told myself it was just memory. And was it? No. She turned. We were inches apart. I said, it was proof. Of what? That it happened. That you happened? That I wasn't inventing how much you mattered. Her eyes shone in the warm bedroom light. For once, she didn't joke. She just reached up and put her hand against my cheek. I was so lonely after I left for school, she whispered, and everyone thought I was fine because I was loud. I covered her hand with mine. I should have known. I should have told you. We're very good at should have. We may be champions. I kissed her then, slow and careful, because this room held too many ghosts to rush. Harper leaned into me with a sigh that felt like forgiveness. Her cardigan slipped off one shoulder, and I brushed my thumb over the exposed skin there, not to start anything, just because I could. Because she was here. Because she wanted me to touch her. When we pulled apart, she smiled faintly. Your mother is going to know. My mother knew in 2008? True. She once asked why I didn't take you to actual prom instead of pretending we went as friends. What did you say? That you would have said no. Harper stared at me. I bought a blue dress because it matched your tie. My brain stalled. What? I thought you'd ask. I thought you'd laugh. She stepped back and pointed at me. We are never being allowed to make assumptions again. Agreed. If I am mad, I will say I'm mad. If I am scared, I will say I'm scared. If you want to kiss me, you don't have to draft a municipal proposal. That feels targeted. It is. I laughed and pulled her back against me. I want to kiss you. Approved. So I did. We arrived at my parents' house at exactly 6:03 because Harper insisted arriving early implied weakness and arriving late implied drama. My mother opened the door before I knocked. For one breath, she just looked at Harper. Then she pulled her into a hug so fierce Harper made a small, startled sound. Oh, honey, Mom said. Harper closed her eyes and hugged her back. Hi, Mrs. Mercer. Call me Joanne. You're 30. I've earned it. My dad appeared behind her with a dish towel over one shoulder. Harper Lane. I still have glitter in that lawnmower. Harper nodded gravely. Some art is permanent, Mr. Mercer. He laughed and hugged her too. Dinner was roast chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans, and the kind of rolls my mother only made when emotion threatened to exceed conversation. My younger sister Tessa arrived 10 minutes late, took one look at Harper beside me, and dropped her purse. No way. Harper lifted her fork. Hello to you too. Tessa pointed between us. Is this a bit? No, I said. Are you dying? No. Is she dying? Tessa, my mother snapped. I'm just checking the narrative stakes. Harper laughed so hard she nearly dropped her napkin, and something in my chest loosened. Halfway through dinner, my dad asked how long we'd been official, using air quotes like he was handling an unfamiliar tool. About 10 hours, Harper said. Tessa choked on a roll. Mom froze with the gravy boat. I cleared my throat. Technically, we've had a written agreement for 12 years. My mother set the gravy down very carefully. The note? Harper blinked. You knew about the note? Mom looked at me. Daniel left it in his jeans. I found it in the laundry senior year. I turned to her. You never said anything. I was practicing restraint, poorly. Dad leaned back. Your mother cried into a sock. I did not cry into a sock. It was a tasteful amount of sock crying. Harper covered her face, laughing and crying at the same time. Under the table, I found her hand. She held on tight. After dinner, my mother produced a birthday cake with crooked candles and frosting that said, Happy 30th, Dan, which Tessa claimed made me sound like a divorced youth pastor. Everyone sang. Harper stood beside me, shoulder against mine, her voice soft in my ear. When I blew out the candles, Mom asked what I wished for. He can't tell, Harper said. I looked at her. She already showed up. The table went quiet. Harper's eyes filled. Tessa whispered, Oh, gross, I love it. Later, while everyone argued over cake slices, Harper slipped onto the back porch. I found her under the yellow porch light, arms folded against the cold. You okay? I asked. She nodded too quickly. Yes. Assumptions are banned. She let out a breath. I'm overwhelmed. I joined her at the railing. Bad overwhelmed? No, that's the problem. She looked that through the window at my family laughing inside. They welcomed me like I'd only been gone a week. You kissed me like you'd been waiting, and I keep thinking, what if I mess it up because I want it too much? I turned toward her. Harper, I'm serious. I know how to be funny. I know how to leave before people can decide I'm a lot. I don't know how to stand still and be loved by someone who actually knows where all my exits are. That was the most honest thing she had said all day and the bravest. I took her hands and stepped close enough that her folded arms had to open. Then don't stand still, I said. Move toward me. I'll move toward you. Her mouth trembled. That sounds suspiciously healthy. I've read articles. Show off. I don't want the note to trap you, I said. I don't want a promise made by scared kids to pressure the woman you are now. She looked up. It doesn't. But I don't want us to hide behind it either. She slipped one hand from mine and touched my chest, right over my heart like she had that morning. Ask me because you want me, not because 17-year-old us wrote it down. My throat tightened. I want you, I said. Today, tomorrow, in my kitchen stealing terrible cupcakes, at diners, at family dinners, in every ordinary place I was too stupid to imagine out loud. She smiled through tears. That was almost a municipal proposal. I'm growing. She rose onto her toes and kissed me under my parents' porch light, soft at first, then certain. Inside, someone wolf whistled. Tessa, obviously. Harper laughed against my mouth. I kept my arms around her when she pulled. Back, she whispered. So what now? I brushed my nose against hers. Now I take you home. Her eyebrow arched. Presumptuous. To your home, I corrected. And tomorrow I ask you on a second date. She considered. And after that? After that, I said, I start earning a yes that doesn't fit on a receipt. Her eyes went warm and serious. Good, she whispered, because I think I'm going to want to give you one. I drove Harper home through streets shining with rain. Neither of us said much at first. Her hand rested in mine over the center console, fingers occasionally tightening like she was checking that I was still there. At a red light, I glanced over. Too much birthday? She smiled at the windshield. Best one I've ever crashed. It was my birthday. I brought frosting, I contributed. You brought emotional chaos in a paper bag. And a legally significant document. When we reached her apartment, I walked her to the door because I was 30, not dead. The hallway smelled faintly like laundry detergent and someone's burnt dinner. Harper stopped with her keys in her hand. This is the part where we pretend to be casual, she said. I'm not feeling casual. No. No. Her back touched the door. She looked up at me, softer without the armor of a room full of people. What are you feeling? I braced one hand on the doorframe beside her. Terrified. Her mouth curved. Romantic. Hopeful, I added. Greedy. Ridiculously happy. Still terrified. That's better. What about you? She looked down at my shirt, then caught one of the buttons between her fingers, not pulling me closer exactly, just asking. I'm scared I'll wake up tomorrow and you'll decide we were swept up in the note, she said. I won't. You don't know that. I do. Danny, I know, because the note didn't make me keep your photo in a shoebox, I said. It didn't make me compare every laugh to yours. It didn't make me wish for you this morning before I even knew you were standing in my kitchen. I swallowed. The note was just braver than we were. Her eyes filled again, but this time she didn't look away. I want time, she whispered. You can have it. And dates. As many as you want. And if we fight, I want us to stay in the room. I nodded. Even when you're wrong. Her tearful laugh burst out. Interesting strategy. I panicked. She pulled me closer by that single button. Try again. Even when I'm wrong. Better. I rested my forehead against hers. Harper Lane, will you go on a second date with me tomorrow? Yes. And a third after that? Don't get cocky. I'm scheduling emotionally. She kissed me then, and it was different from the others. Less surprised, more chosen. Her hand slid up around my neck and mine settled at her waist, and for a moment the whole world narrowed to the warmth of her mouth and the quiet sound she made when I kissed her back. When she opened her door, she didn't step inside right away. Text me when you get home, she said. Yes, ma'am. And Daniel? I paused. She smiled. Happy birthday. I drove home grinning like an idiot. The next morning, I took her to a bookstore cafe where she judged my taste in mysteries, and I learned she read the last page first when anxious, which I told her was criminal behavior. The second date became a third, then a 10th. We did ordinary things, which turned out to be the most dangerous kind of romance because ordinary things built a life before either of us noticed. We bought groceries together and argued over apples. We took walks after dinner. She sat on my couch with her feet in my lap while grading grant proposals for the arts nonprofit where she worked, and I built websites beside her, both of us pretending not to watch the other smile. We fought too, not dramatically, not with slammed doors, but honestly. In February, she canceled dinner 3 times in 1 week because work was swallowing her whole, and I got quiet in that old, terrible way. She came over, stood in my kitchen, and said, Are you punishing me silently, or am I inventing that? I wanted to deny it. Instead, I said, I missed you and didn't know how to ask without sounding needy. Her face softened. You're allowed to need me. You're allowed to tell me when you're drowning. I hate that. I know. Then she stepped into my arms and we ordered takeout on the floor, and she fell asleep against my shoulder halfway through a documentary about competitive cheese rolling. In April, she gave me a drawer at her place. In May, I gave her a key. In June, she started leaving tiny plastic dinosaurs in my house again. One in the medicine cabinet, one inside my coffee mug, one balanced on my monitor with a sticky note that said, This one supervises emotional growth. By August, we no longer said, if this works. We said when we visit the coast, when we redo your kitchen curtains because your neighbors still know too much, when we tell your mother we're not having a large wedding, then fail because Joanne Mercer has opinions and a binder. A year after that rainy birthday, I took Harper back to the Bluebird Diner. She knew something was wrong immediately. You're wearing the blue shirt, she said, sliding into the booth beside me like she always did now. You like the blue shirt. You also look like you're about to negotiate with a hostage taker. I'm calm. You buttered your napkin. I looked down. So I had. Harper took my hand. Danny? I pulled the old note from my jacket pocket. The receipt was more fragile now, protected in a clear sleeve because Harper had once spilled iced tea near it, and I'd reacted like she'd threatened a national monument. She stared at it, then at me. I don't want to cash in a pinky promise, I said. I don't want to win by technicality. And I don't want to marry you because we were single at 30. Her fingers trembled in mine. I took out a small velvet box and opened it under the table between us, private, except for the waitress, who gasped loudly near the coffee machine. I want to marry you because you are my favorite person in every room, I said. Because you challenge me and choose me. and make ordinary days feel like something I should write down so I don't forget. Because I loved you when I was too scared to say it, and I love you better now that I'm not. My voice broke. Harper Lane, will you marry me for real? She covered her mouth. Then she nodded so hard she started laughing and crying at once. Yes, obviously yes. Ridiculously, yes. I slid the ring onto her finger and she kissed me before I could stand, knocking my shoulder into the booth. The waitress yelled, Finally again! We got married that fall in my parents' backyard under strings of warm lights. Harper wore a simple ivory dress and blue shoes because, she said, 17-year-old me deserves the matching moment. My dad gave a toast about glitter. My mother cried into several napkins, all tasteful. Tessa read the original Pinky Promise note out loud and made half the guests laugh, and the other half pretend they had allergies. When it came time for vows, Harper took my hands and said, I promise not to pretend I'm joking when I'm telling the truth. I said, I promise not to confuse silence with safety. Then we pinky promised in front of everyone before we kissed. By the following spring, the kitchen finally had curtains. Harper picked them, yellow with tiny white flowers, and I complained they were cheerful enough to intimidate the toaster. She ignored me and hung them slightly crooked while standing barefoot on a chair, one of my old shirts tied at her waist. Don't hover, she said. I'm not hovering. I'm admiring my wife. She looked down at me, smiling in the morning sun. The ring on her finger caught the light. On the counter sat the framed diner receipt, our ridiculous little contract, no longer a loophole or a dare, but the first clumsy map to the life we were finally brave enough to build. Harper held out her pinky. I hooked mine around it, and this time, neither of us was pretending. What would you have done if someone from your past showed up on your 30th birthday with an old pinky promise note to get married? Have you ever experienced something similar? Tell me your story in the comments. If you like this one, leave a like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.